balance this chemical reaction using the algebraic method. So hopefully by now you've had some practice with it. This one's going to be a little more difficult, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing we do is we assign our letter values A, B, C, D, E, right? Right hand side A, B, C, D, E. Next thing we do is we take a look at the elements and we essentially convert them into equations that we can work with. So let's take a look at copper, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. So if we look at copper, it occurs on two sides only, A and C. It's located once in A, so we write A equal to C, once in C. Hydrogen is located in the B section and also in the E section, but in the E section it's 2 times, so we write it as 2E. This one is 1B, so B is equal to 2E. Let's take a look at nitrogen. Nitrogen has, it's only 1 in the B section, and it occurs, let's see, in 2C. Nitrogen times 2 is 2. C section is 2C. Once in D, so that's 1D, right? So B section is B, once in B, then 2 times in C, so 2C plus, because it occurs also in the D section, so do write it as just 1D. Let's take a look at oxygen. It occurs 3 times in B, 6 times in C, 1 time in D, and 1 time in E, so it occurs in a lot of places. So we'd write it as 3B, because there's 3 oxygens in that B area, is equal to, because we're moving on to the products area, is equal to 6C, 6 oxygens, 2 times 3 is 6C, plus, how many oxygens in the D area? Well, there's only 1, so that's just D. And there's only 1 oxygen in the E area, so that's plus E. Now the next thing we need to do is assign a value. When we assign values, we assign a arbitrary value. Now, usually we set a value equal to 1, but let's take a look at what value should we set equal to 1, or what number we need to work with. So if you look at the equations here, essentially this is like solving a system, right? These equations, A equal to C, B is equal to 2E, B equal to 2C plus D, 3B is equal to 6E plus D plus E. If you look at all of these here, there's a B, there's an E, take a look, but there's only one value of A, right? There's only one value of A. So if I were to start with this equation and plug in a value, I wouldn't be able to find A unless I knew C. So let's start with A. Let's assign an arbitrary value to the letter A. And so the value we're going to assign is A is equal to 1. Alright? So if you don't understand how I did that, just know if you do more practice, you'll get the hang of assigning values. So you're essentially declaring a value. For example, let's say A is equal to 1. So in this case, we'll call A is equal to 1. If A is equal to 1, what does that mean? That means C is also equal to 1, right? We said A is equal to 1, C is also equal to 1. Now this part is the more tricky part, right? Now we're left with finding B, D, and E. So how do we do that? The best thing you can do for yourself is to rewrite the equations, right? So we don't really need copper anymore because we know A is equal to C. So let's do H, N, and O. Hydrogen is represented by B equal to 2E. Nitrogen is represented by B is equal to 2C plus D. But wait a minute, didn't we just say that C is equal to 1, right? That C value is also located here. We can essentially just plug in 1. Remember, we declared a value, so we can carry that out for the equation. So 2, plug in the value of C, which is 1, plus D. right? So then we end up with B is equal to 2 plus D. Let's take a look at oxygen. Oxygen is 3B is equal to 6E plus D plus E. That's very long. 3B times E is equal to 6 times C. Again, we said C was equal to 1. 1 plus D plus E. So what's the final equation look like, simplified? 3B is equal to 6 plus D plus E. Oh, and let's carry this over too. B is equal to 2E. So if we take a look at this, take a look at these three equations, it almost represents a system. Well, it essentially does. So here you're going to solve the system. Okay, so that's what you want to do. You want to solve the system. How do we solve the system? Well, when we solve a system, we want to find individual variables. Let's say, for example, let's find E. Let's find the value E. Now, this is where most people will struggle because we don't know how to start. So when you solve a system, what I recommend is you stare at it and you try to find the value of a variable. So sometimes in math, you just gotta keep practicing and think it through. So we know that B is equal to 2E, right? Right? And we also know that B is equal to 2 plus D, and 3B is equal to 6 plus D plus E. Oh, sorry. If you know how to solve a system, you can go ahead and do it yourself in your own way. This is my method of how to solve a system. There's many ways you can solve the system. I'm just choosing to do it this way because that's how it first clicked with me. So let's take a look at our three equations. B is equal to 2E. B is equal to 2 plus D. 3B is equal to 6 plus D plus E. What is our goal? Our goal is to find a value for B, a value for D, and a value for E. Right now we're stuck, right, with these three equations. We want to isolate a variable, and we want that variable to have a value. So I'm just going to stare at it for a bit and think about it. What do I know? I know B is equal to 2E. B equals 2 plus D. 3B is equal to 6 plus D plus E. I'm stuck. So I'm going to take a look. All right. I know B is equal to 2E, so let's try plugging that in. That's a B. So 2E, if you plug that in, right, is equal to 2 plus D. Same applies here. That B value is 2E, so 3, let's plug in that 2E. 2E is equal to 6 plus D plus E. Let's simplify it. 2E is equal to 2 plus D, 6E, 6 plus D plus E. Perfect. We essentially got rid of the B variable, so we can ignore the B variable. Now we're down to two variables. When you solve a system, remember, you want to find one variable and you want to find that value that's for that variable, if that makes any sense. So 2E equals 2 plus D, 6E is equal to 6 plus D plus E. Now we just want to find a variable by itself. So I can say, hey, if I move over that 2E minus 2 is equal to D, I know what the value of D is now. I can substitute that value of D into here. And you would get 6E is equal to 6. And we just said, what is D equal to? D is equal to this right here, 2E minus 2. So you plug that in, 2E minus 2. Remember, there's still that plus E plus E. Now we have everything in terms of e, so let's solve for the variable e. 6e is equal to 6 plus 2e minus 2 plus e. So let's say, okay, combine like terms. 6e, 6 minus 2 is 4, 2e plus e is plus 3e. What do we get? We get, in the end, we get 3e equal to 4. E is equal to 4/3. Okay, so we found a value of e. Perfect. E is equal to 4/3. Let's write that down. Yay, we have another variable with a value. Perfect. For some of you, it may be quite complicated of how I solve the system. If you have good algebra skills, or, I mean, essentially if you've taken an algebra class, you should have been solving systems. So essentially this is a 3-variable system, and essentially I'm saying solve it. And I know that doesn't help most people, but just know this is the method I use. I usually substitute in, and I try to isolate variables. Now there's other ways you can solve for variables too. I'll show another method if I have time. This video is getting quite long, but let's continue. So we know that e is equal to 4/3, right? Perfect. Now we need to find b and d. So let's take a look at our equations, right? So I know e, oh look, I can find b using the hydrogen equation. B equal to 2e, can you see that? Yes. B is equal to 2e, right? We don't know b, but we do know what e is. What is e? We said e was equal to 4/3. Plug that in. We get b is equal to 8/3. Perfect, perfect. B is equal to 8/3. Let's take a look at our last variable, d. Now we need to find d. So what equation involves d? Well, O and n. I'm going to do n because n looks way easier than O. So let's take a look at n. N is, here, so we found b. Now we need to find d. So b equals 2c plus d. What do we know? We know b is equal to 8/3 is equal to 2 times c. What did we say c was? Remember, c is 1, right? That's what we declared from a. Plus d. We don't know what d is, right? So what's 8/3? I should do it in black. 8/3 equals 2 plus d. Alright, so do minus 2 both sides. Ta-da! You get 8/3. What is 2 in fraction form? 6/3. Common denominators. D, right? Sorry if it's getting messy. 8/3 minus 6/3 is equal to 2/3. Ta-da! So we found our value of d. We're not quite done yet. D is equal to 2/3. Perfect. We found our values. A, B, C, D, E. This video is very long. So, now usually you shouldn't have fractions in coefficients. So the best thing you can do for yourself is to get it to a whole number by multiplying by the smallest number to get a whole number, if that makes any sense. So essentially, we want to make these whole numbers. So if there's a 3 in the bottom, that's a fraction. What can we do to get rid of those 3's? We multiply by a 3. If you multiply by a 3, you have to multiply by a 3 with everything else. It's sort of like cooking. If you need 1 cup, 8/3 cups, 1 cup, 2/3 cup, 4/3 cup, right? And you want to triple the recipe, you multiply by 3. So in the end, you're left with 3. 8/3 times 3 is, so cancel the 3's out, is 8. Oh. 3 times 1 is 3. 2/3 times 3 is 2. 4/3 times 3 is 4. So the video is 15 minutes long. You can stop here, or you can continue watching if you want. I'm going to explain another method for solving a system. Remember how I solved the system here? I essentially plugged in 2e into the equations. There is another way you can do it, and let me go ahead and show you. Sorry, this video is extremely long. B is equal to 2e, right? B is equal to 2 plus d. 3b is equal to 6 plus d plus e. Alright, let's get rid of variable. So what's the best thing I can do for myself? Let's make this negative. Let's multiply this by negative. Let's multiply this by negative 2, because I want to get rid of the 3b, right? So let's see what happens. Negative 2b is equal to negative 4e. Negative b is equal to negative 2 minus d. 3b is equal to 6 plus d plus e. Okay, let's take a look at what cancels. So this is essentially how you solve systems sometimes. You manipulate it and then you add it all together. Add. Negative 2b plus negative b is negative 3b. Negative 3b plus a positive 3b gets you 0. Let's take a look here. What cancels? Negative d plus a d. Oh, that cancels. What are we left with? We're left with 0 is equal to negative 4e plus e. What is that? Negative 3e. Negative 2 plus 6. Negative 2 plus 6 is equal to positive 4. Solve for e. Move 3 to the other side by adding 3e. Get 3e is equal to 4. E is equal to 4/3. So that's one way you can solve for a variable, the value of a variable, solving a system. So this is one way. This is how I did it. I essentially went a longer way. Sometimes people do math differently. It makes sense to them differently. Next thing, how do we can check this? You can check it yourself, but this is the right value. 3, 8, 3, 2, 4. So if I were to write it, 3, 8, 3, 2, 4. So those are the coefficients, and that is your balanced reaction. Okay, thank you.